In November 2009, Marge Simpson stripped off for Playboy. This decision was pitched by the execs to draw in a younger crowd to support the dwindling once iconic magazine. With the explosion of free online explicit content in the 2000s, people just weren't buying photographs of nude, real ladies anymore.
Nothing is sexier than still photos in a girly magazine. What?
But cartoon ladies, that was a whole different niche. The mother figure of our beloved favourite cartoon being sexualized was almost taboo. But why? In this video, I'll expose the racy concept and production for Marge the Centerfold, looking into why we may see her as so damn sexy, and discuss why the creators may have made the decision to expose America's matriarch. I even paid to subscribe to Playboy's iPlayboy membership just to see exactly what was going on. The things I'd do for you guys. Chapter 1, this wasn't Marge's first rodeo. First off, did you know that Playboy wasn't the first magazine to print Marge nude? In April 2004, the magazine Maxim published a soaking wet Marge on the cover with an equally exposing interview. Created to seduce, entertain, and continuously surprise readers, Maxim did just that with The Simpsons. Posed on the kitchen floor, soap-sudded and doe-eyed, the magazine truly exposed TV's cartoon mother figure, with her tall hair finally let down. Inside of the magazine was a page spread of her lying on the bed, awaiting a freshly showered homie, butt and all. Finally hinting that this is actually Marge behind closed doors. Now, I've got to say that the interview isn't too racy. Not as much as the images anyway. It mainly played into the general role of the domestic housewife, rather than personalizing it to the fully realized character that we know of Marge to be. If you could clean any house in the world, whose would it be? The Flanders. What would be the perfect evening out for you? Window shopping for couches. And my personal favourite questions, which cleaning products excite you the most? And if you could clean any house in the world, which one would you choose? Overall, it seemed to place Marge in a very small, clean, polished box, when really a whole lot of fun could have been had with her character beyond the relatively sleazy images. Yeah, she's generally shown as a homemaker, but she's not tethered to the kitchen sink. She's meandered off course from her marriage, definitely has a crazy side, and acts as the town's moral compass, and has been shown to be far more assertive than many of the other women in the show. I mean, come on, this is the lady who protected her family from the First Lady by writing a letter to her.
Dear First Lady, I recently read your criticism of my family. I was deeply hurt.
She's iconic. And yeah, I do get it. The housewife does have that sexy angle, but we already get that from the images. I feel the writers could have had a whole lot more fun writing the Q&A. Chapter 2, Marge the Centerfold Playboy Bunny. The Playboy edition, however, took a different approach. Marge was no longer positioned as a cleaning domesticated machine. She was now on vacation, a similar cabin to the one she visited in 2007's The Simpsons movie. The same cabin that contained an almost Disney-fied act of love, which was both bizarre and beautiful, as well as setting for the most emotional breakup in movie history. So after turning over from an insightful step-by-step of how to build your own cigar, we come across the article, The Devil Inside Marge Simpson, Springfield's Sexiest Reveals All. Now I've got to say that this interview is a lot more wittier than the last. Marge actually seems to be in with the jokes here. She jibes with the interviewer, saying she's only really doing the shoot to support the charity SPHG, which, in case you didn't know, is saving and preserving historic gazebos. She giggles over the fact that Homer apparently has no idea what Playboy even is, and her sarcasm over how hard the shoot was for her. She even came up with her own acronym MILK, which is Mum, I'd Like to Know. Which is perhaps the cutest, dorkiest attempt to be hip, and is the perfect line for someone like Marge.
Am I cool, kids? No. Good, I'm glad.
She's not always the zaniest of characters on the show when it came to a bit, but her endearing, dorky, and relatable humour makes her so unique and very special.
Mom, you're always trying to give me potatoes. What is it with you?
I just think they're neat.
The photos in turn were classically Simpsons as nudes could be, each playing homage to classic poses from iconic women across history. The Simpsons is famous for satirizing real-world events, people, and parodying movies, so this imagery does make a whole lot of sense. We see parodies of famous 1940s pinup illustrations, as well as direct copies of previous Playboy cover girls. She's not showing everything, with a piece of material expertly shielding parts of her, and each one is done so in a tasteful way, with that funny Simpsons edge. The beer cans on the floor, the glazed donuts, Homer's hungry shadow in the background. Yes, these are saucy, but they're not overtly thirst-trapping like the Maxim ones. These illustrations, as well as the Maxim ones, were designed and drawn by the talented Vice President of Animation at Fox, Julius Preet. Through his Twitter, I found some very interesting tidbits on his illustration process and how he felt drawing for Hugh Hefner. He asked his audience, were you old enough to look at this one? I'm not gonna lie, it was a little weird drawing Marge for Playboy. I actually got an email from Hugh Hefner telling me we have to turn up the heat. I felt like I was drawing my mum. Aside from the images, one detail I loved was the model datasheet. This is a classic feature in Playboy's issues, and even though it is a bit weird seeing a nude model as a young child within the same page spread, it's basically a short and snappy Q&A where Playboy asks their models their favourite books, movies, musicians, as well as asking about their goals, turn-ons and turn-offs. When the typical models would say that their turn-offs were men who didn't look after their bodies, that was actually one of Marge's turn-ons. This is why Marge the Centerfold was so iconic. She poked fun at Playboy's done thing and broke the mold while it was still very much a done, fixed thing. And when the interviewer asked for her weight, she called them nosy. And when they asked for her birthday, she wrote very nosy. In between that and overtly calling the magazine smart, her centerfold just played into the humour. Even though readers may have expected to see a rule type 34 Marjorie, they instead saw just another dimension of her character. The piece didn't darken her character, but elevated it. And her image wasn't just being passed around to be manipulated and lusted over. Her character was still very much in there. Executive producer Al Jean even played along with the media frenzy by explaining, well, I talked to Marge today, and she's a little embarrassed. She wanted people to know that the picture is photoshopped, it's really the body of Wilma Flintstone. Which I have to say is very cute and quintessentially Simpsons. Chapter 3, was Marge always sexualized in the show? Yes, her sex symbol status had never reached this level before, but her appeal was still very much in there. This mainly came from a place of her still being the wholesome mother with the obvious features.
Maybe it's severe talking, Marge, but you got a butt that won't quit.
She wasn't shown to be overly provocative, but her attraction came more with the tropes of being a doting, caring wife and best friend who loved a good snuggle.
You're everything that I hope for.
And to a lot of people, I'm sure this is far more of an attractive quality. And this portrayal of an innocent, sacred cartoon wife may have led fans curious as to what she could look like nude. I mean, you only have to search Marge Rule 34 on Google and thousands of results show up. So fans have always been curious about what's under that green dress.
Whoa, this is so naughty.
Anyway, back to the article. As we know, we only read Playboy for the articles. It basically helped promote the episode The Devil Wears Nada that was being released around that time. So the expose wasn't just a random outburst of lusty illustrations, but a conscious choice for what her character was doing at the time in the show. And just to refresh your memory, the episode focused on Marge and the Philanthro Chicks posing nude for a charity calendar, with Marge's pinups becoming the talk of the town. It was this episode, along with a few others, that hinted at Marge's potential of becoming a cartoon sex symbol. We had seen racy images of her before in the early seasons, like natural born kisses, but it usually included Homer in an equally compromising way. Later episodes that stand out to me are Large Marge and The Devil Wears Nada that seem to more overtly point to this side of her. It's not difficult to understand how or why her character was taking this direction. The Simpsons was finally getting some competition for their demographic. Family Guy and American Dad. And no matter what your feelings are on the shows, them and The Simpsons, as a majority, appealed to young men and boys. The difference between these shows was that the newcomers were more overtly sexualizing their characters, whereas The Simpsons were far more PG. You could perhaps visualize The Simpsons viewers move over to Family Guy and American Dad if they felt like they were outgrowing the show. So this is probably what influenced the decision for these episodes and Marge's presence in Playboy. Get that interest, therefore get those viewers. But what makes this transformation so rare to Marge is that we have grown up with her. We have seen her as the wholesome, sweet, dorky, and quite honestly, innocently naive mum. You could almost imagine her as your friend's mum. Therefore, the prospect of seeing her sexualized felt that much more intriguing. She didn't come across as overtly sexualized, and seeing this side to her almost felt taboo, which in turn provokes excitement. Which is exactly why Playboy needed her to sell some copies. But I want to know how you feel about Marge's nudie debut. Was it a good idea? Does it change your feelings on her character? Or do you think it's empowering? Let me know in the comments below.